Hi, I'm Andy Durazo, and I'm speaking with Michael Hamner from the architecture department here at East Los Angeles College. Please tell me about your department.
Well, Andy, it's great to meet you, and I appreciate this opportunity. This is my going on 15 years as the chair of the program. I've been working at ELAC since 1991, part of the Department of Architecture. I grew up in East Los Angeles. My mom actually went to Garfield High School, so there's a bit of a commitment and a history for myself personally, multi generations. Uh, with that, the Department of Architecture far exceeds even my tenure. We are the second oldest architecture program here in the state of California. USC being just over 100 years. We just celebrated, our 75th year. We started when the college started, which started on campus at Garfield High School, and architecture has been a part of that curriculum since the day that we opened our doors. The program has evolved. Uh, what we used to be known as when we were community college is a vocational program, so a CTE, primarily in drafting, prepping students with 2-year degrees and certificates to get into the profession. Over the years, and since my involvement and looking at the profession, I'm also a practicing architect. This is my 37th year, 31 years in practice on my own. My wife's also an architect. We have our own practice together. And so I do come from that perspective of, what the workforce is like and what the practice is. And of course, my years in academia. Prior, I used to teach at Woodbury University, so there's involvement there at the university level. Immediately, we begin to sort of search the perspective of the profession and what was a true sustainable career for our students. And as digital medium has become more involved, and of course, we are in the forefront of that at ELAC. We have multiple levels and semesters of digital design and graphic language, from basic AutoCAD through Revit into 3D modeling of different levels. Those are tied into a rather newer curriculum that we've been operating over the last 20 years, which has really now become our forefront in terms of what we provide our students. While we still have our AA degrees, we still have our certificates, and we have a significant number of certificates, both in drafting and design and graphics and so forth. We are primarily now a transfer program. And that transfer program is articulated with all of our local universities. But I'm really proud to share with you, which any student who's interested in architecture, whether or not they know that they're ready out of high school, but maybe didn't have any architecture courses of any type or drawing courses or what may, and don't have the tools, you may want to consider ELAC because of our relationships with the local 5 accredited universities and our articulation agreements with them. But also, when you look at the map of our students over the 15 years, we average about 24 students a year across the country, including Syracuse, Cooper Union, Auburn, Pratt. The list goes on, Virginia Tech. I can keep going, but a lot here. We average 24 a year, and 97% of our transfers have graduated. And from what and keeping track with those students, as we try to do, that equates to about 350 students. I don't know of any of those that have graduated that are not working. Now, salaries and what type of roles they have vary. Some are working as startups, their own companies, their contract gigs. Others are working for major large firms, maybe starting in the area of about 60,000 a year. Others are doing their own thing or working for smallers that might be in the area of 50,000 a year. One thing we do know is that ELAC students who utilize our program because of the curriculum that we have, which is preparatorily, is that a good word, preparatorily? In preparation is more than actually what the university programs provide. Our students have more skills upon graduation. So when you come to an ELAC and spend 2 years in our curriculum, and then you transfer into the 5-year accredited curriculum, and many schools will take our students at 3rd year, you haven't lost a beat, but you've also had more skills in digital language, technical drawing, and so forth. And so our design studios are actually articulated 1-for-1. There are a couple of exceptions. Some schools only take you at the 2nd year level, so it depends and it varies. but our students are very successful. Okay? And so that as an opening comment, there's our big promotion.
Wow, that sounds great. I mean, those are some pretty big name schools you're talking about there.
Well, the bigger school, I mean, locally, I'm really proud. You can see, I don't know if this is being on video, but I'm wearing a USC shirt. So I'm obviously, promoting USC. That's I'm an alumnus. I also serve the university to this day. I'm on the board of governors. My wife serves with the Architectural Guild on the board of directors. We're heavily involved with the school. They're also a client of ours. So my involvement with them is really heavy. But we also, and for me personally, it's been to have these one-on-one relationships with SciArc, which is another top 10 school in the country, Woodbury, Cal Poly Pomona, New School, Cal Baptist, San Luis Obispo. These are our area schools of influence that we're involved in. We also have students that come to us that are not necessarily looking at architecture, but maybe looking at interiors. Long Beach State is an incredible program and one that we've developed a relationship with. And we have a couple of privates in between there. We have students that go to Art Center that may be going into industrial design. We have a number of students that are going to Otis. The point being is that our students have a lot of opportunities, whether it's philosophy, cost of education. With many of our students get a lot of their tuition subsidized, whether it's through financial aid and of course scholarships. That's another beautiful thing. If I had enough time, I can start listing the number of students who have graduated with honors and awards. And these are kids that prior to coming to ULAC, going to college wasn't nothing more than a dream. And they weren't supposed to be successful. And so that's a real proud moment for us too. But yeah, and then it's the students who are willing and can. We have a young lady right now at Boston College that was from the West Side and just very raw when she came to us and just grew tremendously. And she's just killing it in Boston right now. And she's living in Boston and she just can't believe it.
Wow, that's wonderful. Are there any opportunities for students that just go through the 2-year program and not transfer?
Yeah, there is. It's not, again, when I use the word sustainability, we try to advise our students who come to us with that objective. We definitely have. Many firms will seek our students. Keep in mind that those situations occur as the economy. I've been in this role for 15 years, and I saw the 07, 08, 09, recession, the Great Recession we had, and I've watched colleagues in my age completely, change careers, which had investments into the profession already for 10, 15 years. They just didn't want to deal with the ups and downs. And one way to try to minimize the ups and downs is to have the most tools and credential that you can. Where drafting used to be a big pathway, 60s and 70s, even through into the 80s, it's losing its, again, sustainability. But we do have a lot of students they're either interning or they have just decided, hey, I want to make a go of this right now. I'm going to take advantage. We're on a high, our economy is looking good and we're staying employed. And so I'm going to continue to work while I can. If it slows down, I'll come back to school.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I was going to ask you about interning. What kind of internships are there that are available?
So interning normally is students who have at least a couple semesters, preferably about a year and a half, including knowledge in a program called Revit, which is 3D modeling and construction drawing. And when you have that, you're starting at $25 an hour, and it's a decent entry level gig. The more skills you have, the more obviously you can earn.
Yeah, that's true in any profession. The more you got, the more you can do, the more you can get out there. Let's see. How about tag-alongs or shadowing? Are there any opportunities for that?
It's an interesting phenomena in architecture. It's such a time-consuming profession, from principals and depending on the sizes of the office, the number of tasks that people are doing. There's a lot of programs out there now that are embedded in the pathway to licensure. You hear an acronym called IPAL, which is Integrated Pathways to Architectural Licensure. These are programs that are incorporated into these accredited universities. I used that word before. Accreditation needs to be really understood here, because architecture schools, you'll have your 4-year undergraduate programs that are non-accredited. And actually, that's a program at UCLA and Cal Berkeley. And then you'll have your accredited 5-year curriculums like Pomona, and then the privates I just mentioned, or San Luis Obispo and Pomona, and then the privates like USC and Woodbury and SCI-Arc. That entity, NAAB, which accredits this, is part of the licensure pathway, and IPAL is a ingraded pathway of internship while you're in the curriculum within the university. It hasn't really migrated its way down into a 2-year school because there's simply not enough time for a student. We don't want a student to be at a community college or a 2-year program for more than 3 years, to be honest with you, if not 2 years. We try to be as efficient as possible. But the shadowing component of it becomes difficult to manage, just simply because day to day in offices can vary so much in the dynamics of projects that are in construction, projects that are in the design process, and going through permitting and going through discretionary. It's just very volatile, and it's hard. The amount of time per day sometimes isn't there, to get the task done on time. And so that makes it a little difficult. Here's the great thing, Andy, maybe 5 years ago, that's not true, 10 years ago, when I started knocking on a lot of doors, the schools were good. I'll tell you right now, ELAC students are a commodity. The universities go through an attrition condition after first year, simply because a lot of young people think they want to go into architecture. And once they learn the rigors that are required, the dedication, the sacrifices, your college experience, university experience in architecture is much different than other majors, I gotta tell you. And again, it's relative to that time factor. So a lot of students, they say, you know what, this is not really the direction I want to go. Those open seats are usually filled by transfers. And a school like ours, where our students are so prepared and so ready, in fact, exceed the necessary minimum standards, they're sought after because they know they're completers. And this is, the business sense of what it is. So we have that tremendous relationship and attraction to our students. But those universities have translated that acceptance and acknowledgement is translated into major firms. And Los Angeles has some of the biggest firms in the world, Gensler and SOM, and some really well-known, highly acclaimed design firms, EYRC, Stephen Ehrlich's office. These are all advisors of ours. The advisors of East Los Angeles College, the A-list of names of these superstars that are now adopting us. I just got a call from Michael Maltson's office. Michael Maltson's this prolific housing architect, and we're going to be meeting next week so they can come and engage us, because they want to do exactly what you said. They want to give to our program. They want to provide access for our students into their office and to the profession. They want to help to mend and to correct the lack of representation by many populations, which in a moment, depending on your next comment, I want to give you a personal perspective of that, because it's all based on ELAC's success.
Why don't you go ahead and do that?
So if you saw my name, you'll see after the end of my name, I have the initials FAIA. When you're a licensed architect, you can join the American Institute of Architects, and you get to put those letters AIA. If you ever see an F in front of it, it's almost our profession's level of the Hall of Fame. And to get an F, you have to have done something extraordinary in the profession in order to be recognized. It's a nomination, and then it's a prove it process, which is hard to understand. You don't have the time here to describe it. But let's just say my recognition as a fellow is the work that we did at ELAC. I'm the first 2-year college professor, and ELAC is the first 2-year school. This is a personal accolade, but I wouldn't have had it without ELAC to be recognized nationally as a school that has provided a pathway to underrepresented populations in such a way, so profound, that the national AIA recognized it as something very special.
That is great. That is really, really good. Now, I remember when I was younger, we were both younger, you had to really be good with paper, pen, pencil. You had to be able to draw. Now, I cannot draw a straight line with a ruler nailed down. Do you still need to be that great an artist, or does the computer help to the point where you can see in your head and actually put it onto something else without having to be that great with your hands?
You brought up an incredible. If I had sent you a question, say, hey Andy, ask me these questions, I think that would have been one of them, as well as a follow up with that, which has to do with other academic acumen that you need to have to be a successful architect. But let's go with your first question. Uh, Let me just say this: you do not have to have artistic skills. You do not have to already have the ability, as you mentioned, working with tools to draw a straight line. But we do teach you this. However, yes, the digital side of it will bridge that, but we're a very, very strong believer in a very special learning process, which we know and I know has been successful at ELAC, and this is why ELAC has been successful in our teaching of many students who come to us. A few years ago, students that came out of high school would have to assess. They would take assessment tests in math and English. My first years were very fought in, or I had to fight with counseling to allow students who said, I want to major in architecture. And the counselor would say, well, your math and English standards are not to level that you can be successful. And I challenged that. I said, no, let me have them. And most of the time, reasons why some students are not interested or not do well when they're in the high school level with certain courses is they don't know how to apply them. We are a cognitive process of learning. That's why I do want to mention that I still want to stay with the handwork. So we do emphasize the handwork, the drawing, so that it better strengthens the digital side. But by pushing that envelope of our students, we've created a teaching mechanism that's highly personalized. It's not only respectful, but it's understanding and being empathetic to a culture and utilizing experience, and then teaching the basics. Students who feel that there is something tangible in return for what they're doing and learning will then respond with more dedication to get better at it. So Andy, even with you, and you say you may not have been really good working with that, but maybe you could have been fine on the digital side. I could say to you, I could teach you enough where you can feel comfortable, and all of a sudden now there's confidence. But now what you learn on the digital side becomes more valuable and powerful for you. If we go straight into the learning design through hardware and software, it's the process. We're not quite there with the mechanical world yet, and that really changes students' abilities in the process of design and critical thinking. And so we are someone that I've challenged a lot. Why do we still teach manual drawing and drafting? And I'm one that says because it works here, and yet I haven't had a single student say that you crippled my potential for success because you wasted my time, learning how to draw.
Yeah, I can understand that. We still teach film down in the photo department. The film has no latitude, so if you're under or over, whereas with digital you can correct for it. But so I understand that completely. I understand the older technique being used to enhance the new techniques.
That's the key. That's the way you said it best. If I were to surmise it, it's that. I do want to add one more thing before you ask your next question, or as we move on. Students need to understand that architecture is not engineering, and this is one of the biggest things. If I get it out there to anybody who's listening to this, because you are not comfortable with math or in the sciences, architecture is not STEM. And trust me, if math is something that you feel uncomfortable with, we can get around that because math is not the primary foundation to this. We are a humanity. Architecture is a cross between, first of all, it's almost polymath in the sense that it incorporates Renaissance, all types of disciplines. But it's more of a humanities. It's a critical thinking. It's a collaborative process. It's a thinking by doing. It's a learning by doing. And the science, physics, and math components are really specific. So when we do get the students, and a lot of the university programs have this, calculus, one level for architects, and physics, one level for architects. So that level of like, I got to be good at that in order to be an architect, that's a false nomer. And I don't want anybody to not pursue this thinking that they had to have those strengths. On the flip side, as you just talked about, Andy, if I'm not an artist, if I can't sketch, if I can't draw, can I be an architect? Absolutely. So there is this really cool melting pot of what architecture is. And it's not redefining itself. It's always been that way. It's just, it has multidisciplines from the technical side, people who are production, from the designer side, those are designers that turn it over to the production people. And then there are those that are, the managers of people within the enterprise.
So it's sort of like I tend to tell people that when they don't understand photo, uh, that you don't need to understand the chemistry and physics behind the internal combustion engine to drive a car. So it's sort of the same
That
thing.
is spot on. Spot on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hit exactly where I was going. That was going to be my next question about the academics. Just how high, well, at our level, not at the university level, but at our level, how high a math or how high an English do they need to get to be able to get through our system and then into and possibly into the university level?
Well, we have what's called articulation agreements, and any general application and acceptance requires a certain level of math and English skill, as you probably are aware. I mean, it's English 102, it's math 125. I don't remember the exact level, and I apologize. Architecture programs can ask for additional. Many of the schools have varying depending on the school you're going to, which may coincide with the level of academics that are required by the university in itself. We have many schools that are a little bit more, how do you say, liberal, and they have some that are very, like SLO, San Luis Obispo, they'll require more math level and more other general education, IDETSI components. The reality is that I like to talk about is that how we get students interested in learning. Architecture is a design process. We work with metaphorical, really cross-discipline. We do deal with mythology. In our first semester, assignments in Design Studio is how do we create tectonics of an element of earth, wind, fire, or water. And you find a metaphor, and that metaphor comes from mythology, whether it's Greek, Roman, Mesoamerican, Asian mythology. It allows students to connect with it personally and then research their own history and then bring that back in. They're learning about themselves, or they say, I have an interest in learning about Asian mythology. And then all of a sudden they're starting to find out, wait a minute, this student who's doing Mesoamerican, and this one over here in Greek, and this one who's doing North, and this one wow, there's a lot of similarities, yet these cultures never crossed over at that time. How did that be? And it really develops this interesting dialogue. And a lot of students start to get involved in wanting to research more on their own. So English, poetry, creative writing, it almost starts to become something the students want to learn because they know it enhances their design. Their design then is something they produce. So unlike writing an English paper, Andy, you don't see anything. It's typed on a paper and you read it and it sounds pretty cool. But they have an edifice afterward that they created from that. It's physical, it's three-dimensional, it's architectural, it's sculptural, and it's leading to, now we say, well, how does a Zaha Hadid, how does Frank Gehry, well, how did those forms become what they are? And our kids are learning that in process, and that's why it takes as long as it does. But the reward is very, very valuable.
Yeah, it sounds like a great reward. And you are right. I am running out of time. So, would you have any last thing that you'd want to say to any of our prospective students?
I want students to know how special we are. Before DEI became very important, not necessarily very important, but it was being recognized. We had, without really publicly describing it, we had it in play. It just wasn't in writing. So I want people to know that when you come to ELAC and you come to the architecture program, we will help you. Even if you're behind in your academics, we can help you be successful. We have a track record of it. We believe in diversity, has a summation to it. And diversity is acknowledging and identifying multiple identities in the classroom. You have a voice. Equity means that you are allowed to share all, and everybody's opinions are accepted. We include all ideas in our work, and that creates a belonging. And the teaching and learning in architecture is what we call this collaborative environment. You make lifelong friends. You learn in a very special way. You also become teachers, and you don't even know it, which is very empowering. And at the end of the day, that's what our students end up becoming, is very empowered. And that's it's very strong, both for personal and also for your abilities to have your own voice and not be, at the mercy of others. And strangely enough, architecture is a very, very important part of our social economic history. We look at architecture today and the history of it. It's reflective of those times. And our new students are going to be those that are going to make that same impact for future generations.
Oh, thank you, Michael Hamner. Thank you very much for your time, and we will be back.